The old man walked into the luxury store, his hands rough from years of hard work on his farm. He didn't belong there, at least, that's what the staff thought. The moment he stepped inside, people stared. His clothes were worn, his boots covered in dust, but his eyes carried a lifetime of honesty and kindness. He wasn't here to impress anyone, he just wanted to buy something special for his granddaughter's birthday, but before he could even ask for help, a saleswoman looked at him with disgust. She sneered, whispered to her colleagues, and then did something no one expected. She slapped his hand away when he tried to touch a handbag. The entire store went silent. The humiliation in the old man's eyes was clear, but instead of fighting back, he just lowered his head, ready to leave. What no one realized was that someone had been watching everything. A man who had walked in unnoticed, dressed simply, just like the old farmer. That man was Keanu Reeves. And what he did next would leave everyone in shock. Hey there, before we dive back into the story, let us know where you're watching from. If you love stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We've got another amazing story coming your way tomorrow. The luxury store was filled with the scent of expensive leather and perfume. It was a place where only the wealthy shopped, where people were judged by the brand of their shoes and the price of their watch. The elderly farmer had stepped into a world that didn't welcome him. He had been saving money for months. His granddaughter, the light of his life, had once pointed at an expensive handbag in a magazine and said it was the most beautiful thing ever. She never asked for anything, never complained about their simple life on the farm, but he saw the sparkle in her eyes when she looked at that bag. He wanted to make her happy. He walked toward a display and reached out, his calloused fingers barely touching the fine leather, when a sharp voice cut through the air. "Sir, don't touch that." He turned, surprised. A tall, well-dressed saleswoman was glaring at him, her arms crossed. I'm sorry," he said softly. "I just wanted to see the price." She rolled her eyes. "It's too expensive for you. Please don't waste our time." Other shoppers turned to look. Some smirked, others whispered. The old farmer felt small, like he had done something wrong just by stepping inside. "But I want to buy it," he said, reaching for his wallet. The saleswoman laughed. "Oh, really? With what money? Do you even know how much this costs?" The farmer opened his wallet, revealing a stack of carefully folded bills, money he had saved from selling eggs, vegetables, and milk. It wasn't fancy, but it was his hard-earned money. The saleswoman's expression turned cold. "This isn't a place for people like you," she said sharply. And then, in a moment of pure cruelty, she slapped his hand away. His wallet fell to the floor, the money scattering across the polished tiles. The room went silent. The old man stood frozen, his face burning with shame. He bent down slowly, his fingers shaking as he picked up his bills one by one. No one helped him. People just watched. But then, a voice broke through the silence. "That was unnecessary." Everyone turned toward the man who had been watching from the corner. He had been standing quietly, dressed in jeans and a simple jacket, blending into the crowd. But now, as he stepped forward, there was something powerful about him. It was Keanu Reeves. The saleswoman frowned. "Excuse me? This is none of your concern." Keanu ignored her and walked straight to the elderly farmer, kneeling down to help him pick up the money. He handed it back with a warm smile. "You don't deserve this kind of treatment, sir," Keanu said gently. "Let me help you." The farmer's eyes filled with gratitude, but he shook his head. "Thank you, son, but I don't want to cause trouble." Keanu stood up and turned to the saleswoman. His expression was calm, but his eyes were sharp. "You judged this man without knowing anything about him," Keanu said. "Do you know how much heart it takes to work the land? How much sacrifice?" The saleswoman crossed her arms. "Look, I don't care who he is. This store has a standard. We serve real customers." Keanu took a deep breath. Then he reached into his own pocket, pulled out his credit card, and handed it to the old farmer. "Buy whatever you want," he said. Gasps echoed across the store. The saleswoman's face turned pale. "And no, sir, you don't have to do that," the farmer stammered. Keanu smiled. "I want to." The saleswoman suddenly realized her mistake. "Wait," she said, forcing a fake smile. "Sir, I didn't mean," Keanu cut her off. "No, you meant exactly what you said. And that's the problem." The manager of the store had appeared by now, looking flustered. "Mr. Reeves, we are so sorry," Keanu held up a hand. "I'm not here for apologies. I'm here to make something clear." He gestured toward the old man. "This gentleman came in ready to pay. He was treated with disrespect just because he didn't look like your usual customers. That's not just bad business, it's shameful." Silence. No one dared to speak. Then Keanu turned to the elderly farmer. "Pick something for your granddaughter," he said with a kind smile. Tears welled in the old man's eyes. "I don't know how to thank you." "Just keep being you," Keanu said. The farmer walked slowly to the display, his hand still trembling as he picked up the handbag his granddaughter had dreamed of. He clutched it to his chest like a treasure. The saleswoman, now shaking, turned to Keanu. "Sir, please, Keanu looked at her, his gaze unwavering. "I hope you learned something today." He turned to the manager. "And I hope your store does too." Then, without another word, Keanu placed a gentle hand on the farmer's shoulder and walked him out of the store. As they stepped outside, the farmer wiped his eyes. "Why did you do that for me?" Keanu chuckled. "Because kindness matters. And because I know what it's like to be judged by appearances." The old man smiled through his tears. "The world needs more people like you, son." Keanu shook his head. "No. The world needs more people like you." And with that, he walked away, disappearing into the crowd, leaving behind a lesson no one in that store would ever forget. The next day, the luxury store was trending, but for all the wrong reasons. Customers vowed never to shop there again. The saleswoman? Fired. The manager? Forced to issue a public apology, but none of that mattered to Keanu. He didn't care for revenge, for headlines, or for praise. Somewhere, in a small farmhouse, a little girl hugged a handbag tighter than anything in the world. And that was enough. The little girl's eyes sparkled as she held the handbag close to her chest. She couldn't believe it. It was the same one she had once pointed at in a magazine, the same one she had only dreamed of. She looked up at her grandfather, her tiny hands clutching the expensive leather as if it were the most precious thing in the world. "Grandpa, how did you get this?" she whispered, her voice filled with wonder. The elderly farmer smiled, his rough, calloused hands gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "A kind man helped me," he said softly. The little girl tilted her head. "Who?" The farmer hesitated for a moment, thinking back to the man with the kind eyes, the man who had stepped in when no one else did. "His name is Keanu," he said finally. The little girl gasped. "Keanu Reeves? The Keanu Reeves?" Her grandfather chuckled at her excitement. "Yes, I believe so." The girl's mouth dropped open. "Grandpa, he's a movie star. He's in all those action movies you don't like." The old farmer laughed. "Well, I don't know much about movies, but I know he's a good man." She hugged the bag even tighter, her small heart swelling with gratitude for a man she had never met. "I wish I could say thank you." The farmer looked out the window, his mind drifting back to the moment Keanu had helped him. "I think he already knows." Meanwhile, in another part of town, Keanu Reeves sat in a quiet cafe, sipping a simple black coffee. He didn't need anyone to know what he had done. He didn't do it for attention or praise. He had simply done what he believed was right. But as he sat there, his mind wandered back to the look in the elderly farmer's eyes, the mixture of gratitude, pain, and resilience. He thought about how many others had been treated the same way. How many people had walked into places like that and been made to feel small, unworthy, invisible. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Money and fame didn't matter to him. But kindness? That was something the world always needed more of. As he finished his coffee, he pulled out his phone and made a call. A few days later, the luxury store that had humiliated the farmer received an unexpected visitor, a legal representative of Keanu Reeves. The message was simple: Keanu had just bought a large stake in their company. And there would be changes. The employees who had mistreated customers were let go. Policies were rewritten to ensure respect and dignity for all customers. And most importantly, a new initiative was launched, a monthly event where hardworking, everyday people were invited to shop in the store, receiving special discounts and VIP treatment. The elderly farmer never knew what Keanu had done after that day. He never knew the store changed because of him. He only knew that, one evening, a small package arrived at his farmhouse. Inside was a handwritten note: "For your granddaughter, so she can always remember that she is worthy of the best." Keanu, alongside the note was a matching purse, small and elegant, just the right size for a little girl. When the little girl opened it, she found something even more special: a picture of Keanu Reeves, smiling warmly, with a simple message written across the bottom: "Kindness costs nothing, but it means everything." Tears filled the girl's eyes as she hugged the purse close. She didn't know him, and he didn't know her, but in that moment, she felt something she would never forget. Someone in the world had seen her, had cared, had made a difference, and that, more than anything, was the most precious gift of all. The little girl held the purse close to her chest, staring at the note and the picture of Keanu Reeves. She couldn't believe it. A real-life hero had noticed her, and her grandfather had done something so kind without expecting anything in return. She looked up at her grandfather, her big eyes filled with emotion. "Grandpa, this means he remembers us. He really remembers us." The elderly farmer nodded, his throat tight with emotion. He had never expected anything in return for that day at the luxury store. If anything, he had tried to forget the humiliation, choosing instead to focus on the love he had for his granddaughter. But Keanu had not only remembered, he had made sure they felt seen, respected, and valued. The little girl wiped her eyes and smiled. "One day, I want to do something like this for someone else." Her grandfather placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You already have a kind heart, my dear. And that is the most precious thing anyone can have." Meanwhile, across the city, Keanu Reeves was sitting in his quiet home, looking out the window at the city lights. He wasn't thinking about movies, fame, or fortune. He was thinking about that elderly man, about all the people who had been overlooked, dismissed, or made to feel small simply because of their appearance or circumstances. He had spent his life trying to be kind, trying to help where he could. But at that moment, he realized something deeper. Kindness wasn't just about a single act. It was about a ripple effect. Because of his small gesture, that little girl would grow up believing in goodness. She would learn the power of kindness and, one day, pass it on. He smiled to himself, knowing that he had done something meaningful, not for the cameras, not for the headlines, but simply because it was right. And as he took a deep breath, he whispered under his breath, a phrase that had guided him through his own struggles, through pain, through loss: "Be kind, always." And somewhere, in a small farmhouse, a little girl held a purse and a note close to her heart, already dreaming of the day she could make a difference in someone else's life, just like Keanu Reeves had done for her.